I sat at the table, from time to time glancing at my watch and at the notes of my prepared speech lying in front of me. Now, it was just a habit. I knew the words I wanted to say by heart and had been doing so for several weeks. I knew that what I was about to do was quite a risk, but I felt obligated to do it. I was sorry it had come to this, but the stubborn idiot I called my husband had brought trouble upon himself. What choice did I have? Will my husband like what I have in mind? Hell no. I knew that he liked to always be in control, and I was going to take away all choice and bend him to my will. I sat back in my chair, waiting for him to come home. He didn't know about the ambush I had prepared for him. I know what you're thinking. I wasn't going to sit him down and tell him I had a lover and insist that he either go along with it or I'll throw his ass out and take every last dollar. Well, you're wrong. And I wasn't going to announce that I was divorcing him or demand a trial divorce so I could go out with other guys. Before you ask, no, I had no desire to knock him out just to tie him up and humiliate him so I could sleep with his best friend. And don't insult his integrity by suggesting that I was there to announce that I had found out about his affair, so I went to get revenge. My husband is the most loving, sweet, but most of all loyal man I have ever met. No, this was a different type of ambush, more literal. I glanced at my accomplice, Matt, 6'4", of muscle and tattoos, who was staring blankly at me from where he was lounging in the bedroom doorway, just outside the main entrance. Well, I didn't choose him because of his intelligence. I looked at my watch again. It's almost showtime. As if on cue, I heard Dave turn the keys in the lock of the front door. I nodded to Matt and watched him disappear into the shadows. I put on my best smile. Dave opened the door and, without looking inside, closed it behind him. It was only when he turned again and took 2 steps towards me that he looked up. His face immediately fell. Karen, what the fuck are you doing in my apartment? At this point, the aforementioned 6'4" muscle man stood behind my husband and clamped a wet rag over Dave's mouth and nose. I watched with sadness as Dave struggled, truly alarmed at how long it had been going on. In the movies, those who were pumped with chloroform immediately passed out. In fact, my husband struggled and thrashed and his eyes rolled around trying to see his attacker, but the huge biker knew his stuff. It must have been at least 2 agonizing minutes before Dave changed tactics. He seemed to relax for a moment, then raised his right foot and stomped down. I think he intended to hit Matt in the leg, but he was mistaken. Instead, his boot slid against the biker's shin. I cringed from the reflected pain as even I, big and stupid, winced. Quick as a flash, Matt's plan was rejected. Releasing Dave with one hand, he spun him around and punched him under my husband's chin. Dave saw this coming but was too weak to defend himself. Finally, I saw his eyes slowly roll back into his head and he went limp in Matt's arms. Well, it's a shame, but the effect was the same. In well-rehearsed coordination, Matt and I lifted my prone husband and carried him to the master bedroom. 5 minutes later, thanks to 4 ropes, the job was finished. I thanked Matt and paid him the last $200 I owed for completing the task. He put them in his pocket, then walked out the door, patting his pocket to make sure he had the master keys. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked lovingly into my husband's face, stroking his forehead. What the hell? Why did he turn blue? It suddenly occurred to me that, while unconscious and lying on his back, he had swallowed his tongue. I tried to open his mouth, I don't know why. She probably tried to grab his tongue. It didn't open more than a little. So I put my hand under his neck and lifted him up a little. I heard and felt the air rushing into his lungs. I slowly relaxed as the color returned to his face. Now all I could do was wait for him to come out of his mat induced soon. It took another good 10 minutes before his eyes started blinking. I just sat and stroked his forehead. Finally, his eyes opened completely. After a few seconds, he rushed up war, but the ropes pulled him back. He shook his head from side to side, looking at his bonds. Finally, seeing that he was helpless, he stopped thrashing and simply started screaming, "Help!" as loud as he could. I had anticipated this, so I hit him as hard as I could to stun him a little, and then reached for the gag I had prepared. I was hoping we could talk like civilized people, but if you're going to be irrational, you're going to have a one-sided conversation. When I finished tying the gag, I stopped and looked again at the face I had loved for 23 years. I took a deep breath and mentally pictured my notes. Now, dear, let's continue. But something was wrong again. He appeared to be unconscious. Come on, I didn't hit him that hard. His eyes rolled back and his body seemed to vibrate. Thinking that my slap had triggered something, I just sat there and watched this strange behavior. In a panic, I thought I could undo what I had done by hitting him again. I jumped up, straddled his chest, and raised my hand to administer the medicine. Sorry, dear, it wasn't what it was supposed to be. My body suddenly flew to the side as someone tackled me to the floor. I looked up and, to my surprise, saw another woman. She was a little taller than me and quite beautiful, with fiery red hair. She was much younger and clearly healthier. Just like I was before my athletic body relaxed a little, I found myself pinned to the floor in some kind of wrestling or fighting move. The pressure around my throat made it easy to breathe. I knew that just a little more and everything would change. So I let my body go limp and just stared into her striking green eyes. Let me go, bitch. I need to talk to my husband. I'll let you up, but not to talk to my boyfriend. I want to see what's wrong with him. Try to interfere, and, believe me, I will break both your arms. I called the police, so go or stay. I don't care. You understood? The pressure continued until I nodded in agreement. She jumped up and looked at Dave. His condition remained the same. She quickly laid her head on his chest and listened. I saw the color drain from her beautiful face. Then she jumped up, grabbed the phone, and called an ambulance. As soon as she hung up, she grabbed a knife and cut Dave's bonds, yelling at me to help drag him to the floor. I started to panic. What's happening? I don't know. His heart is beating, but wrong. I can't do artificial respiration on the bed. What the hell did you do to him? My friend knocked him out. But he had to. Dave just didn't want to pass out from the chloroform. The tall redhead fell silent again, listening to Dave's chest. Why did you chloroform it? Is this your way of getting him back? Good plan. No, I know he will never come back to me. Not after what I did to him. He's too proud for that. Further discussion was interrupted when 2 police officers burst into the apartment. The redhead quickly explained what had happened, and one of the police officers quietly arrested me. As I was led to the door, anxiety, horror, but most of all disappointment, simply overwhelmed me. I just wanted to tell him why. He should have listened to me. He should forgive me. I was taken to the police station and put in a cell for several hours. They offered to call a lawyer for me, but I knew I couldn't afford it. I spent almost all my savings on divorce lawyers until I came to terms with the fact that Dave was gone for good. I was still terrified. What if Dave is dead? Then I will never be able to explain why I did what I did, and I will never receive his forgiveness. Finally, I was taken to the interrogation room. 2 detectives sat me down and turned on the tape recorder. I didn't see anything wrong with agreeing to be recorded during the interview, but that was all I was going to do. To the first 3 questions, I simply answered, I refuse to answer this on the grounds that it will tend to blame me. 2 detectives were discussing getting a lawyer for me when there was a knock on the door. The 3rd detective poked his head through the door. The girl is here and wants to talk. With obvious hostility, the first 2 detectives left, and the tall redhead came into the room and sat down opposite me. By the way, my name is Wendy Dormer. Is Dave okay? He will live, not thanks to you. Your little chloroform trick gave him cardiac arrhythmia. Doctors say he'll be fine as long as his heart rate doesn't get too high, and then he just loses consciousness. They're going to let him rest for a while, and then stop the heart and start it up again. There is a 90% chance that he will return to normal. Otherwise, it's a pacemaker for the rest of your life. Breathing a sigh of relief, I took the opportunity to look at her. She was statuesque as a bimbo, with a body that I would have been lucky to have at her age. One look into her eyes told me that although she was superior to me in every physical aspect, I had the advantage over her intellectually. I wonder why she's here. She answered for me. Listen, Karen, this shit needs to stop. When will you finally understand in your stupid head that Dave doesn't care why you did something nasty to him? He just wants to get a divorce and move on with his life. But he must listen to me. No, I shouldn't. You want to tell him? But there's no law that says he has to listen. From what he told me, you had a normal life with him until he came home and found you having sex with another man. He said he thought you had given up on the marriage and he didn't want anything to do with you anymore. But he should just listen to why I did what I did. I know it's over between us, but he needs to forgive me. After he left, I tried to call him, but he didn't answer. It was the same with the emails, they just disappeared into the ether, and I never heard from him. I sent him a letter, and he simply returned it unopened. I even tried to write a registered letter, but he refused to accept it. God, this is so frustrating. I tried to pester him at work, but he simply covered his ears and refused to listen, and then called security. I tried to explain this to his mom, but she just called me a slut and hung up. I even tried to get my mom and dad to intervene, but they said they didn't want anything to do with me anymore. It was painful. But not as much as when my own children refused to talk to me. My last attempt was to refuse to sign the divorce papers unless he sat down with me one-on-one. He simply stopped the process. This is so damn frustrating. If I could just tell him why I did it, then we could all move on, and people would just start talking to me again. What people? Anyone? Yes, I understand that it will be unpleasant. Let me tell you, Dave was disappointed that the kids made this decision. He tried to tell them that they shouldn't judge you, that the crimes you committed were against him, not against them. But now they are adults and can form their own opinions. They are good guys. They and my two get along very well. When did you see them? Have you been to Sydney? No, they were here last week. Now they are on vacation. She ignored the news that her own children were in town but did not come to visit her. Look, Karen, if it saves Dave's life and keeps you from doing this crap again, I'll be happy to listen to you now. I promise, I'll try to get Dave to listen to me. I seriously considered her offer. I stared at her innocent, slightly blank expression. Damn it, I have nothing to lose, but something to gain. The police only had circumstantial evidence, and only Dave was a direct witness. I knew that I could rely on his good nature, and perhaps he would not press charges against me. If this bitch tried to make a statement, I would just deny it. Hell, in my business life, every day before breakfast, I had two stupid idiots like her. I decided to enlighten her on one of the minor excuses I had prepared. Okay, I was a virgin when we got married, and I always thought that perhaps I had missed something in this life. Yeah, Dave thought it might be something like that. But he said that he married a virgin at your insistence. He said gently pressing you to give up. He even said that he flagged this as a potential problem back then. I agreed with him that it would be extremely unfair to use that as a reason when it was your choice back then. Wendy's intervention took me by surprise. She acted a little more decisively than I expected. It was no surprise for her next statement. And don't try to tell me that you were just getting even because Dave played away or neglected you. The children told me that as a child, he was always attentive to you and spent all his free time with you and with them. Don't try to tell me he cheated on you first. I know him well enough to say that he is the most loyal, reliable, honest, and respected person I have ever met. It would never even occur to him to disrespect you. That is, until you threw it away. This woman was starting to piss me off with her naivety. I knew my voice was louder and shriller than I intended, but I didn't care. Well, that was the damn problem, wasn't it? Respect. I have a damn university degree. Dave never finished high school. I was climbing up the corporate ladder after taking care of kids for 10 years, and no one said a damn thing. Dave is promoted to foreman, and everyone thinks he has been elected president. I talk to smart business professionals who drive BMWs and dress nicely. He hangs out with sweaty blue-collar guys who drive Fords. He eats what he likes and still looks hot, while I diet and still look like a plump middle-aged housewife, even after a facelift and breast augmentation. Everyone loves Dave. Everyone respects Dave. Everyone wants to be with Dave. I hate him for this. I paused to try to lower my voice below the squeal I knew it had become. Even when I was promoted to band manager last year, all my parents could say was that with all the money they spent on my education, they expected nothing less. But that didn't stop them from raving about Dave's award. In 3 weeks, I make more than Dave's bonus for the whole year. It was simply unfair. That year, I spent a fortune on hair, makeup, and a dress for my company's Christmas party. I show up, and all I have to say is, "Where is Dave? Do you have any idea what it's like to know that you are socially, financially, and intellectually superior to your husband, but your own parents seem to love him more than they love you? And you?" Wendy shook her head. Karen believed that she hated Wendy more than anything in the world. The athletic girl at school who picked her boyfriends. The empty-headed types who hovered around her husband at parties and laughed at his crude jokes while she tried and failed to impress people with her knowledge and intelligence. The ones who agreed with him whenever a controversial issue arose, even when her reasons were superior. Not just women, but all guys, too. The final humiliation was that after one argument, Dave came to her defense from the crowd. The argument was about being a stay-at-home mom. Dave immediately began extolling the virtues as a mother who selflessly sacrificed her early career to give her children what they needed: loving, caring environment. His comments about how well she looked after her 2 children should have brought them closer together, but had the opposite effect. She, the group manager, must be rescued by the foreman. Well, after a while, I really began to be indignant. Every time I tried to prove that I was better, at least to some extent, it backfired. It just made me look uncompetitive, and worse, it made people rally around Dave. In the end, I decided there was only one way to get rid of Dave. I would take myself as a lover. If I could keep the affair a secret from Dave, it would prove that I was better than him. Only for me. If I could find someone who was a better lover than him, who would give me more pleasure, then I could secretly humiliate him without him knowing anything. Well, it wasn't much of a problem, was it, Karen? Dave is so open and trusting that you could have sex with a guy in bed next to him and he wouldn't notice. How long did it last? 3 guys in 6 months. Wow. Dave thought this one was the only one. Was this what you were hoping for? In general, no. Of course, it was nice to have sex with one of them, but you had to hide it from Dave and successfully hide it, but unfortunately, the sex was terrible. Because I was so inexperienced when I got married, I had no idea that Dave was bigger and better than most men. The guys didn't care about my pleasure. It was just sex without feelings and emotions like, "Thank you, Mom, for the pleasure." I only went with the first 2 a couple of times. The 3rd guy I worked with was the only one who even remotely met Dave's standards. So why didn't you leave them? Because if I did, Dave would win again. I felt like I had to keep going until I had better sex with someone than I had with Dave. Then I could retire, knowing that I had better sex than Dave, and I could stop knowing the things Dave would never do. I taught the 3rd guy, John, everything I liked best. I saw that this logic simply did not fit into Wendy's head. Serves you right, bitch. You should have focused on your husband and not had sex with the entire football team. So what happened, Karen? What you're telling me now doesn't fit with what Dave told me. He decided that you wanted to get caught. That's why he came home at the usual time and found you having sex on the couch. Of course, I didn't want to get caught. I knew Dave would kick me out if he ever found out I was cheating on him. I realized that John would never get me where I wanted to be, so I came up with another plan. Dave had sex with me a couple of times within hours of me being with other guys. It was a little hot, but still not what I wanted. I made the mistake of reading several humiliation stories online. There was one story about a woman who forced her lover to be with her, and then she forced her husband to have sex with her after some time. This story touched a nerve with me. I knew this was what I was looking for. If I could pull this off, my obsession would go away. No matter how inferior I felt since then, I would remember that Dave would have been humiliated that day. So I took Monday off and invited John to come over in the afternoon. The plan was for him to have sex with me just before Dave got home. I set my alarm for 4:45, knowing that Dave always gets home promptly at 5:30. I was about to lie down on the couch and invite him to have sex with me when he walked in. I was just lucky that for the first time in many years, he came home early without calling. I stopped, realizing that in my anger and despair, I had wildly deviated from my script. He didn't actually come home earlier, Karen. If you had gone to work that day, you would have realized that you and Dave had forgotten about the start of daylight saving time the day before. He arrived at work an hour late, but left at the usual time. He said he called and left a message on your cell phone. Crap. I really don't understand why you thought all this was necessary, Karen. I talked to Dave about this a lot, helping him heal, and not once did he let me know that he considered himself superior to you. In fact, he worshipped the ground you walked on. As for your parents, when I talked to them, I always got the impression that, except for this incident, they were very proud of you. Yes, now I know it. I realize most of it was in my head, but it felt so real at the time. That's exactly what I wanted to tell Dave from the very beginning, but the stubborn idiot just wouldn't listen. So you came up with this little plan to get him to listen to you. How was everything supposed to go? Well, I found out where Dave lives, and hired friend to help me tie him up so he will be forced to listen. I bought chloroform online and broke into Dave's apartment. When he came, this guy had to give him chloroform and help me tie him up. However, everything turned out to be crap. The chloroform did not knock him out, and he began to attack the guy. My hired assistant had to knock him out with his fist. Then we tied him up, but as soon as he began to come to his senses, he had a strange seizure. I slapped him so that he would pay attention, and then you burst in. You'll keep your promise, won't you, Wendy? Will you tell Dave why I did this? Before I answer that question, Karen, I just wanted to ask how you think your plan turned out. Well, Dave won again, didn't he? I lost my job, all my friends and family abandoned me, and even my own children don't even talk to me when they're in town. Meanwhile, Dave becomes a victim. My reputation is in tatters. I'm damaged goods. If I ever want a date, I'll have to leave town. Dave makes the woman line up in case I break up with him. No chance, Karen. I know gold when I see it. Now let's get back to your question. I'm not going to tell Dave about your twisted logic for ruining his life. Honestly, I didn't understand a word of it, and I can only see that it will cause him even more pain. While calling her a treacherous bitch, I noticed that she was twirling her right index finger, pointing at the ceiling. The meaning of what was said became obvious when the door opened and two detectives entered the interrogation room. One of them went straight to the tape recorder standing on the table, pressed stop, and took out both cassettes. Well done, Sergeant Dormer. Unusual tactics, but clear admissions of breaking and entering, assault, conspiracy, and unlawful confinement. We'll see how Mr. Brown behaves after the operation and what other charges we can bring forward. Thank you, Rex. I know Dave is going to hate this, but the only way he can relax after this is if that crazy bitch is safely behind bars. She turned around just before approaching the door. Karen, when you leave, please respect Dave's wishes to never see you again. I was too stunned to even respond. Damn, am I really not smarter than everyone else?